Hi, we are going to be talking about something very different from what we talked about before, which was inflation. And I was telling you how difficult it was to deal with inflation for so many nations. So many nations suffered so badly through inflation, etc., etc. But since 2008, the world is fighting completely another phenomenon, a phenomenon which is exactly opposite to inflation, a phenomenon called recession. So we are going to be talking about recession today. Um, Before I talk about recession, let me tell you one thing, that since the economies actually developed and took the form that it has taken now, where money is a very important part of our economy, economies are supposed to be, especially capitalist economy, are supposed to be going through what is called business cycles. So it starts with boom, then it goes into recession. From recession, it goes into depression. From depression, it goes into recovery. And from recovery, it once again becomes boom. So an economy would experience boom 2004 to 2008. Recession 2008 onwards, as far as Western economies, American and European economies are concerned. 2011 onwards, as far as most of the developing world is concerned, or even those emerging economies, BRICS, all of those going through recession. Boom, boom, everybody. 2004 to 2008, everybody was going through boom. Then recession. From recession, it goes into depression, which interestingly, nobody did. From recession, it goes to recovery, which is what happened with the US economy when Obama took over. And by the time Obama's term ended, US economy and European economies were claiming that they are coming out of recession, recovery. And from recovery, it could have gone to boom. It never did because COVID struck and some other things also happened. I'm not going to go into details of each and every incidence, but just understand that economies are supposed to go through these cycles. And the first time the world saw these cycles was in 1929 when the Great Depression occurred. And many people lost their jobs and there was widespread misery. And that was a time when uh, the economics which was prevalent, which now we call as classical economics, which we don't even teach our students anymore because it's not relevant at all. So classical economics was in vogue in those days, and it just could not explain what is happening. So when it could not explain what is happening, it just could not even say how we come out of it. And nation after nation going into depression, going through tremendous misery, and nobody knew how to come out of it. And that is the time when an economist came up called John Maynard Keynes. Note down this name, John Maynard Keynes, an economist who changed the entire face of economics for the world. And that's why it's called Keynesian revolution in economics, because everything that existed was thrown out of the window. And what came in was what Keynesian economics was all about. So that was the greatness of Keynes. And Keynes explained why this is happening, which over a period of time we have realized was not a very great explanation, and it does not apply to lots of recessionary situations that the world has gone through. So the explanation of Keynesian economics is not very important. Solution is. So every time recession strikes, we all become Keynesians. So we all follow what Keynes taught us. That time we forget what is called the new classical economics and neoclassical economics and post-Keynesians and whatnot. And then they gave up even the word Keynesian. So this entire cycle that economics has gone through is completely forgotten. The moment recession strikes, what do? You do what Keynes had taught. So that is what is still the greatness of Keynes. There are a lot of caveats to that also. If I have time, I'll come to that. But this is in gist what is the history of how recessions are dealt with. Before I go into what Keynesian economics talks about, I just want to tell you one very important thing. So, and put this in your mind so that you never ever forget, because a lot of policymakers also tend to forget this at times. Inflation happens, we said, because of four things. It can be overheated economy, it can be deficit financing, it can be shortage of fundamental goods, or it can be situations like war, etc. Four reasons. Okay. So we said there is something called demand pull inflation, there is something called cost push inflation. But in all these cases, remember one thing which happens in inflation, try out in your own mind how. I'm not going to explain that to you, but what happens is always the supply is less than demand. Too much money chasing too few goods. Supply always less than demand, or demand always more than supply. That causes inflation. Okay, always remember this so that you know how to tackle the situation between inflation and recession. So this is one part where demand is more than supply. You have inflation, you have prices increasing. I mean, your economics, fundamental economics, that demand curve is like this. I mean, the equilibrium is like this. And then when you find that the demand is increasing, then your negatively sloping curve, which is this, is going to be shifting up. Okay, so that is what is your the inflation. Now in recession, exactly opposite happens. In recession, supply is more than demand. So what you find is that goods are accumulating on the shelves. They are not selling. They are not able to sell. People are not willing to buy. For whatever reasons, people are not willing to buy. So demand is less than supply. How this happens, there are lots of theories about it, which I'll explain. But recession is when supply is more than demand. And demand is, since demand is not there, the entire cycle starts where you have too much goods accumulating. When too much goods accumulate, the producers stop producing, they let go of the staff becomes unemployed, and then they stop their demand. So the demand decreases further, and like this, the recession goes further and further down. It's a downward spiral. So you go down very fast. Okay. So this is what is the recessionary trends. Okay. First the history, and then I'll take you to actually what is happening since 2008. But first, very quickly, understanding the theories. So what did Keynes teach us? What Keynes taught us was that uh, for any income that a family earns, the family usually does not spend the entire income. The family keeps aside a certain income for meeting the contingencies, for emergency purposes. We save. So we save a little and then we spend the remaining part of it. So he called this marginal propensity to consume. So for every additional 1,000 rupees that you get, how much would you spend? So you realize that when you are very poor and when you get additional income, you will spend that entire thing. So your marginal propensity to consume is 1, or at times more than 1, because you do not have enough income, you borrow and spend. So marginal propensity to consume is 1 when you are very poor, or more than 1. As you come at this threshold where your marginal propensity to consume is equal to 1, so whatever you are earning, you are spending that entire thing. But then comes a point when you are actually becoming a middle class person, where now you will start saving. So what this means is that Keynes is saying that as the economy progresses, more and more people will become prosperous. And as more and more people will become prosperous, more and more people will start saving and putting aside that money. If they don't do anything with this money, then that money is being withdrawn from the economy. So what that means is that I am getting 100 rupees, and then, so that 100 rupees came from, as we said, GDP, the gross production, gross domestic production. From that production, I get 100, but I am putting up demand only for 90 because 10 I have kept aside. So then slowly, what will happen is that the economy will start actually going down because people are keeping aside the money. So economy gives the money in hands of the people, and then these people do not use the entire thing. So what comes back into economy is less than what is given in my hand. So the economy starts slowing down. The wheels start turning slower and slower. And that is how he says recession occurs. Understood? So you will find, I will be showing you the graphs some other time, but I just wanted you to understand this, that because you have people who are saving, who are putting aside the money, that the economy starts slowing down. Now let's go a step further. People who save do not always just put it aside and do nothing with that money. There are a lot of people, especially the middle class people, who have bank accounts and they put that money in the bank accounts. Now, as we saw in the banking chapter, that banks actually take those deposits and lend it out to people. So you are once again putting that money back into the economy. So then there is no issue as such because your money is once again going back to the economy. There are no problems. When do the problems arise? If the savings remain unused and if the savings are not invested. So then it's once again leakage, because for whatever reasons, the person who borrowed the money did not use it, or there is no demand for investment, people just do not want to invest. And because of that, what happens is that your savings are more than investment. Whenever savings are more than investment, you have recession, because slowly, as I said, the wheels of the economy will start turning more and more slowly. Okay, so that is what Keynes is trying to say. I hope you understood this, that it happens mainly because people put aside something. Marginal propensity to consume is less than 1. And that is how an economy would invariably enter into recession. As I said, the world has proved that that is not always the correct explanation, but this is how he explained it. Okay. Now, he says that, so your economy has started slowing down. So C, consumption has started coming down because MPC is less than 1. I, investment, is also less than savings for whatever reasons people are not ready to invest much. So C and I are both lower, because of which the economy has started slowing down. And so he says that how do we come out of this problem? He says use G, because GDP, as we saw, is C plus I plus G. So C is not coming up, I is not coming up, private parties are just not putting in money into the economy. It is sinking, and it is sinking and sinking and sinking further and further and further. So now, as it happened with India, I mean 2011, we were not sinking so much, but by the time we came to 2017-18, we were already sinking much more than that. So that time we were growing at say 6.6%. We started growing at something like 4.6 or 5%. So we were coming down. The economy was slowing down further and further and further. So now he says how to come out of this. So according to him, the way to come out of this is that G increases. So he says let the government start spending money. The government should make up for the demand. The demand is coming down for both C and I. So let the government start spending. So start spending on welfare, start spending on infrastructure. 2 things you start doing immediately. Now, how will that happen? If you start spending on welfare, you are of course going to give the money in the hands of the people who are poor, because it is welfare. So, and poor, as I told you, marginal propensity to consume is 1. So the moment you put in the money, the poor will immediately spend it, and then as they spend, it will be earned by somebody else. But these are all wage goods. Wage goods matlab poor will buy the things which are only cheap goods, you know. So those are called wage goods, goods you can afford with wages. So poor will buy the wage goods, the production of wage goods will increase, and as the production of wage goods will increase, which also gives employment only to the poor, once again MPC is equal to 1. So then once again the money goes in the hands of the poor, then they will spend, then the wage goods production will increase, and your economy will start turning already. One more thing, infrastructure. So when you start investing in infrastructure, you not only would employ laborers, now you will start buying cement, you will start buying steel, you will start buying so many different things which is required for construction. And when you are buying from so many things, these are the foundational, fundamental industries which have very strong backward and forward linkages. When I say backward and forward linkages, that means that they buy from many people and they sell to many people. So many industries will start coming up because infrastructure happens. So that is the reason why government is supposed to be spending on welfare and on construction. This is all Keynes, okay? We are still into Keynesian economy. And Keynes goes to the extent of saying that if you can't find what to do with this poor, how to give money in the hands of these poor people, he says, make them just dig the ditches and fill them. गड्ढे बनाओ और गड्ढे खुदवाओ और गड्ढे को भरो, बस और कुछ मत कराओ उनसे. Zero productivity, doesn't matter, just give money in their hands. That is what he says. It is very important that money goes in the hands of the poor, and then it will start moving. So remember, these are the major tenets of Keynesian economics, which teaches you how to come out of recession. Now, in the next lecture, we will see how this has been used in the modern times. But the foundation comes from Keynesian economics. I'll stop over here and I'll see you in the next class.